Let's begin with an exercise. I want you to close your eyes and imagine a world. In this world, most of society gets by through working class jobs. A privileged few own a majority of the wealth, while the rest of society starves. Those who wish to better their lives seek education as the only means to become productive members of society. Their education system was one that was created with a purpose, but is now degenerated through years into a system of red tape magical culture. A school system that refuses to adapt to modern technologies, resulting in a disillusioned youth unprepared for life outside of education. Can you picture it? It sounds eerily close to our society, right? Unfortunately, the description I gave you came from the book Sabertooth Curriculum by J. Abner Pettywell, written in 1938. It is a satirical novel that dives into the failings of the educational system in the 1930s by comparing it to the educational system developed by cavemen of the Paleolithic era. So, the book begins its story like every great story does, in a bar in Tijuana. Student Raymond Wayne runs into his old professor, J. Abner Pettywell, at the longest bar in Tijuana. After the two of them get drunk on tequila daisies, Pettywell proposes a series of lectures on the intricacies of Paleolithic education over the course of 3 days. And so begins our tale. Educational revolutionary New Fist Hammermaker noticed how children spent their free time. Realizing that their play served no purpose, he decided to help guide these children to use their time to develop skills needed to better survive in their society. Though the term did not exist at the time, New Fist Hammer used backward design to help develop his curriculum. Backward design is the idea that lessons should come from the skills you are seeking to teach and not derived from the methods, books, and activities with which we are most comfortable. In other words, one starts with the end, the desired results, and then derives curriculum from the evidence of learning. Curriculum should lay out the most effective ways of achieving specific results. Wiggins and McTeague, the authors of Understanding by Design, came up with 3 steps to backward design. The first step is identify desired results. So in the story, New Fist Hammer knew that at the end of his curriculum, his students would know the skills that, according to him, tribesmen know how to do in order to live with full bellies, warm backs, and minds free from fear. Their second step was determine acceptable evidence. New Fist Hammer boiled down the needs of Paleolithic society into 3 essential skills: fish grabbing with hands, woolly horse clubbing, and tiger scaring with fire. And step 3, plan learning experiences and instruction. New Fist Hammer, having backwards designed his curriculum, had children learn these skills through active practice in the fields. It was a huge success. However, like all educational revolutionaries, he was met with hostility from greater society, unwilling to adapt to his new system. This will be a common theme throughout the book. However, eventually society caught on and the first schools were created. As years went on and the earth changed around them, the curriculum once held near and dear to the society as a whole was becoming sorely outdated. Tigers had gone extinct, only to be replaced by ferocious bears. Woolly horses disappeared and were replaced by agile gazelles. And the water became cloudy, and the fish became smart, making it impossible for them to catch fish with their hands. As society adapted to their new environments, changes to the educational system would naturally follow suit, I would assume. However, education stagnated. The elders of the tribe scoffed at the need for teaching so-called skills as foundational classes because they were not education. According to them, we don't teach fish grabbing to grab fish. We teach it to develop a generalized agility which can never be developed by mere training. We don't teach horse clubbing to club horses. We teach it to develop a generalized strength in the learner, which he can never get from so prosaic and specialized a thing as antelope snare setting. We don't teach tiger scaring to scare tigers. We teach it for the purpose of giving that noble courage which carries over into all the affairs of life, and which can never come from so base an activity as bear killing. From here, we can see the stagnation in real time. Students are not being taught the skills that they need to survive in their society. If we look at the Dreyfus model, covered in Andy Hunt's book, Pragmatic Thinking and Learning, he explains that we could see how essential it is to gain skills from novel to expert. As a novice, you experience fundamental differences in how you perceive the world, how you approach problem solving, and the mental models you form and use. How you go about acquiring new skills changes. External factors that help your performance or hinder it change as well. The elders in Paleolithic society refused to change, fundamentally preventing students from achieving their full potential as experts by wasting their formative years on subjects that are no longer relevant to a modern society. This goes on for the rest of the book. Rather than coming up with new innovations, their education system becomes further entrenched. Higher education was created to teach advanced versions of these essential skills and theories behind them, but they did nothing in terms of developing new schools of thought. They became obsessed with the minutiae of education, such as how many fish eats, their version of curriculum hours. Should a person have studied these subjects before they become an expert in the field? However, sometimes innovation can happen even in the most entrenched systems. One common problem that the educators faced was a lack of real-world experience students were getting when learning these fundamental skills. Students can learn how to scare tigers or grab fish all they want, but unless they had real-world experience from it, they could never gauge how effective they were at accomplishing these tasks. The Paleolithic version of authentic assessment sprung forth in the forms of the Real Fish School and the Real Tiger School. Well, what is authentic assessment? According to Wiggins and McTeague, authentic assessments are scenarios that replicators simulate the way in which a person's knowledge and abilities are tested in real-world situations. Rather than having students take a quiz in which they show their progress by answering various questions on the subject, authentic assessments have students apply their knowledge to the real world. The New Fish and New Tiger schools allowed their students to practice their newly learned skills using real fish and real tigers. Thus, they were able to practice and show their skills in a simulation of real life. Here is where they got it wrong, though. Wiggins and McTeague also state authentic assessment also requires judgment and innovation and replicates key challenging situations in which adults are truly tested in the workplace, in civic life, and in personal life. This is why these two schools failed at educating their students. It does not matter how authentic the design of your curriculum is. If you are not innovating and if the subject has no importance in the surrounding world, ultimately it will have been for nothing. As the world around this Paleolithic society expanded, their culture fell further into ruin. Their way of life prevented any momentum to occur. Soon, they were invaded by a more advanced neighboring tribe and ceased to be, lending credence to the term adapt or die. So why is this book important? This book was written in the 1930s, and yet it paints an eerily accurate portrait of our educational system today. As an educator and a curriculum designer, you need to be aware of the pitfalls of falling into the trap of complacency. People considered masters in their fields are lifelong learners. Don't approach education like the elders in the book did. The essence of true education is timelessness. It is something that endures through changing conditions like a solid rock standing squarely and firmly in the middle of a raging torrent. We need to constantly adapt to how we are teaching our kids so that they can enter the world with the best possible chance of succeeding. Also, the book is entertaining. I think humor is one of the best ways to get a point across. It is rare that I find a book that is beneficial to my field, but also something I would read for fun. If you're someone looking for something good to read, but have a hard time picking something superfluous when you could be spending your time studying, this is a great choice.